Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into this episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts. Look, we love Cincy Shirts. These guys have been around FC Cincinnati from the very beginning. I can remember the first time I saw FCC designs in a Cincy Shirts storefront. I thought, man, this team really made it. And it turns out that was basically the case. Their merch has always been on point. Everybody is always decked out with their Cincy Shirts gear on game days. So if you are needing new gear, the Cincy Shirts folks have hooked you up. They are giving you 10% off your entire order, and it doesn't have to be FCC gear. That's the pro tip here. If you go to cincyshirts.com, that's Cincy with a Y, and use the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, they will get you 10% off your order, and it kind of lets them know that you heard about them from us, right? Let's keep that between us. So you heard about them from us there. Now, they have MLS and MLSPA licensed gear there, and they've got 2 locations, one in Hyde Park, one in Fort Mitchell if you want to do your shopping in person. And guess what? They'll print on demand in their shops. That is the best part there. So again, cincyshirts.com, use the promo code PostCincy or use the link in the description of this episode. Get 10% off your next order. And on this episode, well, if you've been on the internet the last couple of days, you know exactly what this episode is about. And if you haven't been on the internet the last couple of days, well, you are about to get filled in. We are talking about the dramatic breaking story from Tuesday. Matt Miazga allegedly tried to force his way into the referee's locker room after the New York Red Bull FC Cincinnati playoff match in Harrison, New Jersey. Did this play out exactly as it's been described? How was it actually described? What are the ramifications? What are the most likely outcomes here? We cover it all of this and more. Well, that's going to be your postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I've got 2 gentlemen that are in for this month hiatus mid-playoffs with me, joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Grayson, I feel like we didn't have this problem last year, but I don't know a way to have playoffs without the international breaks ruining it. There are FIFA windows in October and November for 11 days in each of those months, and there will be till the end of time unless FIFA radically alters how they manage international fixtures. But I don't remember this last year.
We also didn't take a month-long break to play Leagues Cup last year, which kind of screws things a little bit.
Yeah. I wonder if the 3-game best of 3 makes this an inevitability, or if there wasn't, I don't know, a better way to do this.
Could you have it done? No, I don't think you could. I don't think you could actually get it done before the October international break.
It'd be tight.
But if you did, you could just have Leagues Cup across essentially the next 2 international breaks. Or you could take the international break to set up for Leagues Cup and then just do that in November.
Or you could at least group play through one of the international windows, right? Of it's League Cup, who cares?
Yeah, right.
Or you could also just have all the owners pool some money together and just bribe FIFA to stop having so many international breaks. There's an absurd number of international breaks. And it would be one thing, I don't have a lot of sympathy to MLS playing when they claim, there's international breaks in the summer, because we've made the decision that we are going to play through the summer, which is the Euro calendar, which FIFA seems hell-bent on abiding by. That's their off time. So nothing's going on. But you would think that most of these leagues would start to get a little hacked off, that we're putting international windows in the middle of the actual club season. And there's way more money in club soccer than there is in international soccer. Or put it this way, there are way more very wealthy people with interests in club soccer than there are in international soccer. And I feel like there's a dollar amount in soccer that just makes this problem go away.
There's definitely a dollar amount in soccer that makes this go away. I agree that there's more wealthy people involved with club soccer than there is international soccer. The issue with international soccer is that's where they kick up, essentially. Like, there is no club soccer without FIFA for various reasons that are very hard to extricate yourself from. But that said, all that means is that there's a number, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem like they need this many international windows. I feel like with international windows, instead of having all these random international windows over the course of the year, why don't we consolidate it down to like 3 or 4 longer ones? And just, like, why do we had an international break in a window in October? We have one in November. Maybe we just have one in October and it just goes a little longer, as opposed to continuously stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. Just, I don't understand the point of it all, especially when, like, I'm looking at this as someone who is deeply concerned about the future of our planet and the well-being of us as a species. You cannot tell me that it is in the best interest of society that we have to have Aaron Bopenza taking a flight and burning all of that carbon, going from the United States to wherever Gabon is playing, coming back, burning more carbon, then going back and doing it all over again. Look, to me, the crime isn't against the schedule makers at MLS. The crime is really against the planet here. And I think that that's something we should all get behind.
Well, remember with Bopenza, there's also going to be like a 3-day stop off in Paris as well in there somewhere. So
do you think he jokes about that when he leaves? Do you think he says to the coach, all right, I'll see you on Thursday? It's like, Aaron, you're supposed to be back on Tuesday. I know, I'm just screwing with you. You got me.
If he does, that shows me they're well and truly over it. No, Chief.
Or does Bopenza also, is he also lost his privileges to do what I consider to be the greatest travel move ever when you're not on an agenda? And that's, I'll take the later flight for the voucher. It's like, I was going to be back, but they were offering $2,000 in Delta credits if I gave my seat up.
Can the Delta credits be applied to the salary cap? Because now Chris Albright's ears perk up and go, I can fit a homegrown under the cap.
What's the conversion rate of medallion miles to GAM is the real question here.
Well, they better get that in before the end of the year because it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Rack them up now.
Sore subject still.
No, Chief, you are not alone in that idea. Arsene Wenger, who has historically had, in my opinion, some terrible ideas about how to fix the sport of soccer, he did have that idea, which is he went a step further and he said international soccer should take a 6-week residency in the typical Northern Hemisphere summer and do it all then. All of your tournaments, all of your qualifiers, get it all out of the way over a big chunk, make it a big to-do, and then your club soccer can continue unimpeded.
Yeah, I just don't understand why, like, if you are the public investment fund of some oil state, why you're okay with, we spent billions of dollars and our players stopped playing for a week here, and then they stop playing again for another week. I feel like at some point that club soccer gets so... The line only goes up here. And with all the money in that, every time players travel, it's an opportunity for things to go awry. Every time players play internationally, it's an opportunity for what amounts to an investment in your club getting hurt. At some point, something's got to give when the wealthy people are all on one side of the ledger. We've learned that throughout the course of human history.
Well, and just like the basic organizing structure of all of this is so horrifically wrong and backwards. Like, imagine if the FDA was also a drug manufacturer and selling, over-the-counter drugs and pharmaceuticals.
Oh,
and
don't give them ideas.
Well, I just there's a point where FIFA is the police, where they are regulating the sport and sort of, making sure all the competitions happen, while at the same time putting on competitions and putting on, these matches. Like, they are a competitor to club soccer as much as they are the police of club soccer. That's just unsustainable. That will come to a head at some point in horrific legal fashion and probably, oil money being spilled everywhere to untangle that.
As somebody said this week online, is that the only true, it was about college football or college athletics and the constant push towards, deregulation, paying players. The only party that's truly undefeated here are the lawyers with the billable hours. I feel like that's the inevitable end to all of this as well when it comes to FIFA.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and I'll go ahead and throw any and all TV executives in the winners of the college football fiasco or college athletics fiascos.
Or if you're, what's that guy's name? Rocco Commisso?
Yeah.
Maybe you're both.
Man, he has a soccer stadium named after him in New York, and the Cosmos still couldn't find a place to play. Just amazing.
Yeah, what was the old line? It was he'd rather make a dime his way than $1 somebody else's.
100%.
In the immortal words of Blazing Saddles, he's got a shitload of dimes.
Oh, God. Well, we are stuck here in our literally 3-week-long pause button of the playoffs. Now, thankfully, our team is done. This is great. We've advanced to the next round. Go the FC. So for our benefit, there is essentially a Major League Soccer game every single night for the foreseeable future. So from that perspective alone, I kind of like this. This is nice. I don't mind this at all. Full disclosure, as we're recording, it looks like New England and Philadelphia are going to go into halftime tied 0-0. So we'll see.
They better post up a security guard outside the ref's locker room, I'll tell you. I don't know if you saw this.
Was there a red card just now?
Mark Anthony Kaye just got a red card for stomping, I think it was Gazdag.
Oh, no.
And it was given on VAR.
Oh,
and,
boy.
As he left the field, he got up in the personal space of the fourth official.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Pretty good.
Oh, he got him good. I'm watching the replay right here.
Oh, man. Well,
yeah, I mean, it was a stomp. It was bye-bye.
This really hurts the chances of New England to win this one. So
I was kind of hoping
Mark
this would
Anthony Kaye,
go
like, dirty player, by the way.
Yeah, I think this cements it.
He's the guy who took
Matarrita
out of the season last year
in international play. So,
international play, yep. And he's just he's a dirty player generally.
Yeah. Another reason to get rid of the international windows during club soccer seasons.
Get them to play Canada.
Full of dirty players. Well, speaking of getting into referees' personal spaces, we got something to talk about. I'm going to do my best to try to run through the general outline of events as they unfolded, mostly over Tuesday, midday, afternoon. If you are somebody who works for a living, this was either a very unproductive afternoon for you, or this was a very fun evening back read based on everything that went on. So in general terms here, as far as I can remember that, and as I have it here, at around noon on Tuesday, the PSRA officials Twitter account, that is the labor union account for referees that do MLS games, amongst others, but that's the main one there. Different than Pro, they're employed by Pro. Yeah.
I was going to say, like making sure that we have this clear, because until this, I was under the assumption that Pro was the referees union in MLS. And I understand it can be confusing that there is a organization of referees that is not the bargaining agent for the referees. Right. And if the union is completely separate from Pro, or the union makes up Pro.
So Pro is the company that employs officials for Major League Soccer, NWSL, and, potentially other competitions.
Yeah.
Pro officials can work under non-pro deals, like in international competition, for example. But Pro is an organization. It's actually set up as a joint venture between U.S. Soccer and MLS in, I'm not going to have this year exactly right, but I want to say directionally 2006. And I believe this is still the case. They actually do business out of MLS's offices in New York.
Hilarious.
They have like a section of MLS's offices that is the Pro headquarters, and I'll leave it there. But that's gonna come back in probably in some of the stuff that I want to talk about with this issue.
Yeah. No, this is good. So it's the PSRA. So this is coming from the referees.
Oh, the PSRA is the union.
Yes.
That represents the refs, yes. And they represent Pro. There's also Pro 2, which is who primarily does NWSL and certain non-MLS competitions.
Is there a rel here by any chance?
No. But there's actually, I think, two different contracts. There's a Pro contract and a Pro 2 contract. The Pro 2 contract just went into place this year.
Okay.
Because they there was a fight in 2021, pretty well publicized. Because I think the MLSPA, the NWSLPA, and other, I think the Independent Supporters Council actually also has a tweet in support of the Pro 2 organization effort. So the Pro 2 officials won the right to unionize in 21, I think late 21, and they got a contract, which the big deal is getting the contract, because that's when you cement in your wages and benefits and other employment protections. They got the contract this year.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and it's important to keep track of who is putting these statements out there, because it does certainly color or flavor the statement. If it was coming from Pro itself, which, as we said, is owned by MLS, that means a lot different.
Part owned, but
or part owned, yes. That means a lot. Something different, I think, in my mind, than it coming from the referees union account. So PSRA around noon tweets, and my God, you'd think somebody around here would have.
I could read it.
Grabbed the tweet. Thank you.
So they say, after the November 4th New York Red Bull FC Cincinnati match, a player gained unauthorized entry into the officials' locker room and was forcibly removed by stadium security while acting in an aggressive and hostile manner. No one's safety should ever be at risk, and we expect MLS to act accordingly. And then there's a reply.
Yeah.
I'll read that as well.
Yeah.
This is an unacceptable and, as we recall, unprecedented violation of league policy and sporting integrity. We have urged MLS to take appropriate disciplinary action against the player and to remind all league participants that violations like this will not be tolerated.
Yeah. So that is the first time, as far as I can tell, anybody publicly knew anything about this. I'll point out, did not name even a team, let alone a player in this. Not clear why that was the case, but that is what happened. Then it took up...
And it's important also to note for context that we're recording this on Wednesday, November 8th. This tweet happened on Tuesday, November 7th. About a game that had taken place and been contested on Saturday, November 5th.
Yes.
So a full almost 60, 72 hours after the conclusion of this game.
It's a good long while. It took about an hour after that before we started hearing rumors, and there was some posts on Reddit that it was an FC Cincinnati player. And then about an hour and a half after that or so, Jonathan Tannenwald from the Philly Inquirer tweets out that he's hearing that that player was indeed FC Cincinnati's own Matt Miazga. And I'll say every single person speculating up to this moment assumed it was Matt Miazga. So it then comes out that it was indeed Matt Miazga that was the player involved here. However, it was but a half an hour or an hour after that confirmation.
Wait, first, before we go further,
please,
I want to talk about how people respond to things like this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And so the statement comes out, and I think it's and these people's understandings of statements like these tend to drift as they talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so things that like aren't in the statement or aren't directly said by the statement become like kind of generally accepted because people talk and what actually they do this like little game of telephone with stuff like this. So I think it's clear to talk about like to kind of parse them when they come out and say what were the factual declarations here.
Yes.
Right. What was like facts and what was like
flavor.
Extra.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is PR at the end of the day too. And it's the art of saying something in such a way that you cannot be criticized after the fact for being untrue, but you can phrase things in such a way that you lead people to a conclusion that is beneficial to your view of the facts, I think.
Yeah.
And this is one reason why it's important to realize this is the union talking and not pro, because the union, at the end of the day, is an advocacy group.
Yes.
That exists to advocate on behalf of its members, which is good.
Yeah, it should.
But you have to, it should be doing this. Maybe not this specifically. I'm agnostic on that because whatever. But the unions generally need to be accepted that they're going to advocate for their members. And it's just up to, other stakeholders and the rest of us to like understand that as we're assessing various situations.
Right.
Just like companies will advocate for themselves.
Right.
Right. So fact number one, after the November 4th New York Red Bull FC Cincinnati match. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, a player gained unauthorized entry into the official's locker room.
Okay.
It's not clear what unauthorized entry means, right? Does it mean stuck your head in through an open doorway? Or does it mean open the door and barged in?
Now, I can actually add a hint of context to this because the statement included a picture of the tag that I presume was on this door. Maybe it's on every door. It just says referee locker room authorized personnel only. So there you go.
It also, with that first clause as well, is that it does not make clear when this incident occurred, whether this was someone coming in immediately after the match ended, half hour after the match ended, hour after the match ended. Doesn't make any statement about that. Just at some point after the match had concluded.
Forcibly removed by stadium security. Again, the only like pure fact in there is is removed by stadium security.
Yeah, forcibly.
Forcibly, that could be like they yelled at him. That could be they kind of put their hand on their shoulder. It could mean they grabbed him and restrained him.
Carried him out.
And yanked him out, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. And then the last is while acting in an aggressive and hostile manner. Now, I know they don't mean it this way, but the way it's written means that stadium security was acting in an aggressive and hostile manner. But let's assume that they meant the player was acting in an aggressive, hostile manner. Well, even so, was the player acting in an aggressive and hostile manner when they gained entry, when they were in there, when they were moved by security?
Yeah.
What does aggressive and hostile mean? Does it mean physical contact? I would assume, physical contact would be mentioned if it happened.
Mm-hmm. It's not even clear that they were hostile at the referees. They could have had a pleasant conversation and got hostile at security that was forcibly removing them.
Right. But basically, and then the second sentence, no one's safety should ever be at risk, and we expect MLS to act accordingly. It doesn't say anybody's safety was actually at risk.
Yeah.
Right. It just says declaratively,
nobody should be.
No one's safe. No one should ever feel unsafe.
Which to that, cool. Yeah, nobody disputes that at all.
Right.
The question is whether or not was anyone actually unsafe in this situation.
Right.
What they're saying is after the game, a player was in some form or fashion across the barrier of the officials' locker room, and stadium security got them out. And at some point, somebody was acting in an aggressive and hostile manner.
Yeah. There's certainly, if I may now take one step into the speculation side of this, they certainly want you to think that somebody was being violent towards the referees, smashed into their locker room, was making threats, if not actually being violent. And it took stadium security hauling them away to finally, restore safety to the referees. This
is what you would write if you wanted somebody to think that, but couldn't actually say that happened.
Right.
Is how I took the statement at the time.
Yes.
And how I still take the statement.
Because if that was the case, if somebody had kicked the door into the referee's locker room, you would have said that plainly.
Mm-hmm.
If someone would have put their hands on an official, or
even in a friendly way, right? Or they could have said, put hands on the official.
Or made a specific threat to the official, they would have said that.
Right.
What's unsaid here is equally as important as what's said, because this statement was crafted specifically because, again, when you write a statement like this is PR 101. The first rule of spin is that your spin must contain all allegations that are factual. You can't be caught lying about something. You always need to have an out at the end that says, oh, well, we just had an alternative view, and this is how our view of what happened was. This is the danger, not to break kayfabe too much. This is part of the danger of when you read a story about a crime that occurs right after it happens,
right,
when you're only getting one side of the allegation. And most of the time, everything that has ended up being reported is factually accurate, but the devil is in the details of how much, how hard, how far, and to what extent.
Yeah. And you can, especially in crime reporting, it's a great example. And I don't want to get on this tangent, but if you read some of the stories about some of the crime in Over the Rhine by one of our local outlets, it's a classic example of making true statements, but giving a very misleading impression by what facts you include, what facts you don't include, and what order you put things in, what things you put next to.
Yeah, the connections
each other.
You make. Yep.
Even without making a direct connection, right? Just listing two things side by side, the reader takes a connection away. And with the statement like this from the PSRA, it's kind of your job to put out the most aggressive statement that you can write without like being shown to have told a direct untruth.
Yeah. It's super interesting too. This is like just a broader thought on this whole thing of like, you've got a player and a referee both employed by the same organization, or at least via the chain of ownership, some partial ownership.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And competing CBAs on how they might manage discipline here or something like that. Feels like it'd be right up Grayson's wheelhouse there.
Well, the other thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say the other thing.
Go.
Finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to move on to Pat Brennan providing us further context. So you get into yours.
Right. Before we get to Pat Brennan's thing, just also remember that the way this works because look, all life is politics, not capital P politics, little p politics. And the way a lot of this sort of stuff works in, we'll say, the world of spin and control of narrative and that sort of thing, is that there is always a reason information gets out or doesn't get out, as the case may be. And so when I noted at the outset on this one, that it was in excess of 48 hours, almost 3 days before anything about this incident made it public. And it wasn't like, oh, it was the weekend and nobody had time to get this out. There was a full-on weekday, a Monday, a slow, non-newsy Monday that this could have been released, and it wasn't. And so a lot of the time, organizations, whatever their function may be, they choose to release information publicly as a method of putting pressure on someone that they feel isn't taking them seriously, or is blowing them off, or has decided that something isn't a big deal, because they want the court of public opinion to weigh in on their side. So it becomes incredibly important part of this story, an incredibly important part of this story, that this information, in whatever state it was released at this time when there was no compelling reason that it couldn't have been done earlier, but for the fact that there was some positive reason for the union to get this out now. And you can speculate as to what that is. And because they invite speculation, I'll invite speculation. And that's that they had already reported this to MLS, and MLS was planning on just not doing anything about it. And they thought that by releasing this information and ginning up interest in this story, it would put public pressure on MLS to do something to Matt Miazga versus just saying, no harm, no foul on this. And that's given an enormous amount of context by the part that you're about to read next, Kevin.
Well, let me add an alternative speculative theory. Okay. A fact that we do know was happening simultaneously in those intervening days is FC Cincinnati had come out immediately after the game, basically, and said that they were going to appeal Matt Miazga's yellow card. Okay. Yellow card appeals go to a 3-person committee. There's a representative of U.S. Soccer, a representative of Canada Soccer, and a representative of Pro. Okay. So if there was any talk about potentially overturning his second yellow, somebody employed by Pro, likely a referee, probably also a member of the PSRA, would know about how that vote is going, right? Mm-hmm. And it's likely that information would get back to the PSRA. And then, okay, you're going to take his yellow card away. We're going to blast this thing on Twitter that we didn't even, for all anybody knows, report to MLS or Pro directly on Saturday.
Yeah. Now you look silly, rescinding this man's yellow card. Don't you know he's a violent threat to the sport or
It's
whatever?
like, do you want to rescind his yellow card and ignore this heinous act of violence against referees?
Right. This, what was it? Unprecedented act.
I mean, we had full-blown Navy SEALs had to drag him out.
Right. It would be the functional equivalent of, you're trying somebody for murder and you can tell the jury's not going your way. So at the last minute while they're deliberating, you bring in evidence like, I heard he beats his wife too. You might want to look into that.
Right.
How dare you let this person go? Look at all the horrible things he does besides this.
He's got unpaid library fines. Let me tell you, folks, not a good character. So
I heard he owns Dogecoin. You can't trust a person like this out in public.
Look at his crypto wallet, folks. You cannot let this man free. So we're I think we're about 2 hours after the initial statement, maybe a little further along. Pat Brennan, we get a tweet. Well, first off, I liked the baiting the tweet. Some additional info coming, folks. Really should have dropped the subscribe to the Inquirer link on that one, Pat. Just critique for next time. But then,
he kept us waiting for 11 minutes too. After that, some additional info incoming. Which, Pat, I think you may be listening, and if you are listening, stop. This is not worth your time. But if you are,
don't listen to us.
Gold, just absolutely gold. I respect the hell out of the additional info incoming, knowing that you had an entire fan base of perpetually online individuals just hammering the F5 button.
So good. So, like I said, we're 2.5 hours after the initial statement. Pat Brennan tweets, a source with direct knowledge of the post-match alleged incident raised by PSRA said stadium security was not involved at all in Miazga's exchange with referees. Matt was basically moved along from the area by a member of FC Cincinnati's comm team, per source. And I like the per source because I could go ahead and bet that the source was said comms team member. But hey, it's just me speculating a little bit there.
But
yeah, it's a pretty different picture being painted here.
And people have tried to portray this as just a distinction between the ref thought that it was a member of security.
Right.
But it was actually a member of the comms team. But I will tell you, the way a member of comms team leads a player away is very different than the way a member of security would lead a player away.
And also, the way a member of the comms team dresses, there is no mistaking the difference between a comms team member on a road trip where most of these guys are suited up for a road trip versus how a stadium security personnel dresses.
I mean, some of the members of at least one member of the comms team is pretty tall. So you could maybe he can handle himself a little bit. So you could mistake him as a security guard, but it's not just a distinction between whether this person's a security guard or a member of the comms team. It colors the entire exchange.
Exactly.
It now it becomes something that I thought was possible from the initial statement, which is, he sticks his head into an open locker room door, says some trash, and a member of the comms team says, hey man, move on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. And Pat Brennan agrees with you. He retweeted his initial tweet with his own sort of take on it, and I agree with it quite a bit, and it frames it up nicely. The point being, this is Pat now, the point being stadium security versus a member of comms team is a much different proposition that calls into question how disorderly, if at all, Matt really was, and it's a challenge to the facts the referees established that is significant. I will say after this, sometime later, I don't know exactly when, the Athletic published a story on this that included sources from both New York Red Bulls and FC Cincinnati that was summed up with essentially this entire incident is being vastly overblown.
And it's worth quoting this directly because I think that this is a rare instance where this was a really good piece of in the moment reporting on a story that was emerging and breaking. It was Tom Bogert that wrote this, and it was genuinely. This is a big compliment, and this isn't like a compliment that's like it sounds worse than it is. This is NFL quality journalism in terms of how fast the NFL breaking news in the NFL has to be analyzed, reported, and the story has to be fleshed out quickly. The article that Bogert writes on The Athletic, it's behind a paywall, so if you haven't read it, find it. I think it's on all of the Discords now. You can.
I think
find
it's Bogert and Pablo Maurer, by the way.
Okay, it was good either way. Sources said Miazga left with a member of Cincinnati staff and was not forcibly removed. The Inquirer's Pat Brennan, and they spell it with the I, which I always enjoy for Inquirer, also reported, which means that there's another source that he's talking to beyond who Pat Brennan talked to, also reported Miazga was not removed by stadium security. Another source who was in the vicinity of the incident also disagreed with the suggestion that Miazga was forcibly removed and suggested that, quote, the entire thing has been blown out of proportions. Later in the story, it says Miazga, according to two sources briefed on the matter, wanted to speak with referee Victor Rivas about the yellow cards that he received at the end of the game, which did not result in the red card because one came during a penalty shootout during which the time counted separately. So this is a completely different characterization of the story, and this changes the situation. As we talked earlier about the referees union tweet, it was like, okay, this is being crafted in such a way that you cannot find a factual lie that they are saying, but it spins it in a certain way. Well, now this is Pat Brennan and The Athletic, Maurer and Bogert, talking to what I think is, if I'm counting correctly, 4 sources.
Multiple from both teams, at the very least.
Yeah.
Multiple from both teams, all characterizing this completely differently and reporting specifically a factual misstatement by the officials union regarding having to be led away by security, which is, once you establish that as a given, that, okay, on one side, you have the advocacy group, the bargaining unit for parties involved saying one thing, and you have 4 separate sources on the other side, not affiliated or only somewhat affiliated with the situation. You've got, if it was just an FC Cincinnati employee, that would be one thing, but you've got team employees on both sides directly contradicting that. Then at that point, you lose all credibility with the original reporting, and every part of that should then be viewed with grave suspicion. If they have already gotten a fact wrong, if they have a fact wrong, you should also view with suspicion the implications they're making based on that fact.
Because why did they say it was a member of security if they didn't know, right? Why would you say that if you don't know it to be the case? And the only reason you say that, and nobody, I presume nobody like identified whoever it was as security to them. And the reason you say it was security is because it makes the whole situation seem worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is what like it's, everybody is now having to fall back from an initial impression they got from this statement. And yeah.
And you're first, you color the initial impression.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So now everything is, now the incident wasn't as bad as it was. Still, the framing is still a bad thing happened. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought, instead of like, I don't actually think anything happened. Like, you can't have that opinion now. It's like way too hard to start there now, or to get to there now. It's, it's frustrating.
Another thing to keep in mind, I'm gonna hold that thought, because I think we're gonna talk about like takeaways and aftermath in a bit.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to find. Yeah, the only thing I was trying to find is somewhere Tom Bogert did an AMA, and I thought he had said like players talk to referees all the time after games, which also I think would.
He said something like, I've never seen one of these actually made public.
Okay.
Which would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that would make a lot of sense. That it would not surprise me. They all have locker rooms right there.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to find a map of the locker room situation in Red Bull Arena. I went on like YouTube and tried to find like virtual tours and shit. I couldn't find anything that showed like if the ref's locker room is like on the way to the visiting locker room.
Surely one
whatever.
of our 12 listeners will pull a public documents request from whatever.
And that also changes things tremendously. That if this happens on a regular basis, that players go, it's like, hey, what was up with that? I'm not fighting with you. I'm just curious what your reasoning was on that.
Yeah.
Or, hey, the next time we play these guys, you should know this guy said this, this, and this. If that happens all the time, and on this one time it got a little heated for whatever reason, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Now there's no way of knowing. It could have been, now you can look at that original statement by the referees union, and it would be completely consistent with Miazga poking his head in saying, hey, what the fuck was up with that yellow card? I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can't do that. I'm sorry. No, that's going to put me out for the next match. I'm kind of hacked off about that. And the comm staff's like, okay, come on, Matt. We don't need to have this fight right here. That is completely consistent now with what they have said, but for the fact that there is a obvious misstatement of security forcibly restrained Matt Miazga in there. And if that's really the case, you have to wonder why. Why did they kick this hornet's nest up doing this? Who made this decision? Who runs this social media account?
So
Who's
that's
the person
thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they have. I mean, I guarantee you, PSRA doesn't have a social media person.
Yeah, like a dedicated
who runs this full time
comms person.
So the person running this is almost certainly a referee.
Is it the guy? Is it Rivas? Is it the referee that ref this match?
So look, if you, man, we're getting in the weeds here a little bit.
Get into the weeds, Grayson. This is your moment.
So the PSRA is a nonprofit.
Okay.
So nonprofits have to make certain forms available, and those forms have to show like, how much money they have, what their annual expenses are. And ProPublica, has a very easy search tool. So you can find, at least they have for the PSRA, they have through the December 2021, although I expect the one for 2022 to go up any day now because 2021 went up on November 8th of last year.
Which is today.
So I would expect,
as of
so I would expect it to go up pretty soon. But they're like, so for 2021, they don't have like any payroll taxes or anything. They have like their only expenses are like non-employee related expenses.
Right.
So it's not like they have like a full-time social media person on staff.
You said no payroll taxes? Is it possible it's entirely volunteer run then by random referees?
So it's possible. Yeah. They do have like, I don't know what this is. So this is not, I'm not saying this is scandalous or anything. This is just what the document says. They have like $66,000 in management fees, $96,000 in legal fees, almost $5,000 in accounting fees. I assume those legal fees are related to the 2021 organizing fight for Pro 2, but that's only because it seems like a big number to know that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
But it does list who their board was at the time. And the board was, the president was Peter Manikowski. He's a retired referee who it looks like works as a lawyer, like an employment lawyer.
Feels like a good pick.
Vice president was Brian Poschel, treasurer Jonathan Johnson, and secretary was Chris Penso.
Oh.
So he's like the only real name I recognize there. But I do believe, so those guys have been on the board at least like the few previous years as well. I did find an interview that Peter Manikowski gave a couple months ago regarding NISA not paying refs, and he was still the president at that time. So there's a pretty good chance that he's still the president. Pretty good chance Chris Penso is still on the board. But like, there's no way to know who sends this tweet, right? Except that I'm pretty sure it's a referee.
Right.
Which I think raises the question, like, how do these referees, when they're openly advocating for Miazga to get like some type of league punishment, how do they officiate FC Cincinnati games moving forward? I mean,
so this is the fun part for me.
Yeah.
Because backing up to earlier in the morning, I had a little downtime at work, and I decided that what would really be funny is if I, in my capacity as person with the admin account for the Queen City War Pigs, would issue a press release. Why? Because I don't know. I find that funny that anyone would take this seriously, that I would issue a press release with just the logo for a fake supporters group at the top. We are officially calling on MLS to appoint a special counsel to review all cards issued to FC Cincinnati defender Matt Miazga to determine if there is bias from pro referees against him. We also demand that he be allowed to play during this review. Many people took this seriously, despite the fact that we had the direct quote from Donald Trump of, "We need to pause everything until someone can figure out what the hell is going on here." And then additionally, fuck Columbus. And the all good press releases should include a byline that tells you where it's being released at. So that's Cincinnati, Ohio.
Smart.
And then the last paragraph should always be information about the organization that is releasing the press release.
Yes.
And you finish it up with 3 of the little hashtag symbols. Why? I don't know. It's just what you do.
That's how they all do it.
The final paragraph, which I thought would be a direct tip-off as to what this was the Queen City War Pigs were founded in 2016 by a local Cincinnati soccer supporter, potentially while inebriated, with a stated goal of, quote, aggressive banter, but not from my real social media account where someone might get pissed off and send the tweets to my boss.
You really should have emailed that to the press at WLWT, press at WCPO.com.
I have all those email addresses.
Inbox.
Right.
Now, that was earlier in the morning. And then all this news breaks and I end up on, MLS images that precede unfortunate disasters or whatever as a result of this.
Yeah.
But having said that, I don't know that that's not a real thing now. Like, to Grayson's point, if the official that sent that tweet is not one of the people that was working the FC Cincinnati New York Red Bulls game, it means that somebody communicated to him whatever happened.
Yep.
Which confirms a suspicion that I have that all of these people are on a group chat and they just talk away about everything that happens in these games, and they complain about players, and that this guy always embellishes, or this guy treated me like an asshole.
Oh my God.
Watch out for it.
To get in that group chat.
Oh God.
The mother
Grayson,
load.
Grayson, if there is any information act that is free that can get access to these text messages, somebody call Bob Ruhlman. We have a new gang of 5 that we need to investigate right now.
There's got to be a way.
So
get Uncle Bobby on the case.
So I do think it's probably an issue. Like, so if they're investigating Miazga for whatever this was, which, again, we don't know if anybody told anybody about this until the PSRA put the tweet out.
Right.
And there's reason to believe that they didn't, because it's been characterized as a nothing burger by everyone that was spoken to off the record about this.
And allegedly there are similar incidents that also go unreported. Yes.
There probably also does need to be some type of review of like whether anybody involved with this game, involved with this tweet, can officiate FC Cincinnati games moving forward. I mean, they've taken a position that's like basically like, we don't care what league internal discipline under the, and by the way,
yes, please.
I find this very anti-solidarity for a union to be asking for a union member to experience employment consequences outside of the scope of that employee's collective bargaining agreement.
That is so good. Yes.
But all that being said, I wonder. So the tweet itself, okay, while it does talk about an incident involving a player, does make statements more broadly about like the need to protect referees.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't ignore the fact that this is coming on the heels of Vanni Sartini's joke about like killing a ref and other news around the world about mistreatment of referees.
Yes.
Right. So this is a group statement about work conditions, so it probably is protected against like retaliation by pro.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean MLS can, however, like refuse to give involved officials certain game assignments? I don't know. I mean, I think that would depend on whether MLS is viewed as like, I mean, look, I don't know anything. I'm making this up. Whether they're like a joint employer of
speaking completely
officials.
hypothetically and in nothing that I would ever know in my official capacity outside of my podcasting life.
I did look up, did do some research, and there was a pro official who sued pro and MLS for age discrimination, and MLS got dismissed because they said MLS was not
the employer.
Was not a co-employer, not a joint employer with pro, that the ref was only employed by pro. But that was like a New York state court case. I don't know how much water that would carry in like with like the Biden NLRB or whatever, but
right.
that's for, you know, people who actually know things about this stuff, like people in our Discord. But yeah, like, is MLS like a co-employer of pro? Is pro, is PSRA showing poor, are they, you know, acting as kind of a rat by, by demanding like harsh sanctions on Miazga, even though he's covered by a CBA that is, you know, provides whatever his punishment is going to be. I've seen some folks talk about like 3 days being mandatory if he's guilty of quote unquote ref abuse.
Right.
That comes, as far as I can tell, from a Jeff Carlisle article. I'm not saying he's not going to get 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am saying that I am not aware of anything that makes a 3 game suspension mandatory or even recommended in Miazga's case under any circumstances.
Right.
As far as I can tell, that comes from a Jeff Carlisle article where he says it's not clear what MLS protocol is for stuff like this. U.S. Soccer Federation has 3 games for ref abuse. U.S. Soccer Federation does not govern MLS play.
Right.
It does not govern discipline in MLS games. That's governed by the collective bargaining agreement. Now, somebody might say, some idiot might say, well, Clint Dempsey got 3 games for tearing up a notebook. I would respond, well, that was in the United States Open Cup,
which is run by
which is
US
governed
soccer.
by USSF rules. So it's not really.
So don't be an idiot and say that. You know better now.
So yeah.
You'd think that.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I don't know what, like, I mean, there's a clear procedure in the CBA for this would be deemed, if it's bad, it would be deemed on-field misconduct.
Is it on field though? If it's happening?
Yes, because the CBA says anything that happens basically like on stadium grounds.
I see. Okay.
Is deemed on-field misconduct.
Okay. So the fact that it happened after the whistle in the locker room
Correct.
doesn't matter as much. Okay.
Which is stupid, because then by that standard, the post-match celebration where they're all getting drunk and throwing each other around, you wouldn't let them drink beer on the field. There's a complete difference between what happens on the field.
But you're allowed to do certain things. You're allowed to do certain things on stadium grounds you're not allowed to do on the field, like defecate.
I mean,
like it would be a violation to do that on the field, but you can do that in designated areas of the stadium.
Something you could
what
do.
What a great way to time waste, though. You take a shit on the field and somebody actually has to go clean it up.
It's a good point. Surely you get a
and
yellow
if you do
for
it
that.
if you do it like right on the goalkeeper's end line before penalties, he's not diving to his left.
That's a good point. I like that. I do like the
other
idea.
Question: Would Miazga have been covered though if he had the captain's armband and went to go yell at the ref about what happened afterwards?
Ooh, yeah.
No.
If he keeps his armband on during the entire time, is that like an immunity idol for what's going on?
It should be. I do like the idea of a bone crunching
diplomatic immunity,
a bone crunching tackle, but in the hallway, like going back to the thing. Like it's not an assault officer. That was within.
John Tolkien just falls down, grabbing his leg in the back hallway.
He shouldn't be vice captain anymore, right?
He should be captain.
No, I did like your take, not to steal your thunder about this, but the idea that like everyone that said Lucho was too hot-headed to be a captain.
They all wanted Miazga.
Yes.
Yeah. How's that turning out?
I know. I got a lot of tweets saying I've never seen anybody say that. Folks, I've seen a whole den of them say it.
Binders. We got binders of people saying it.
That's a real thing. I did not make that
No,
up.
This makes me respect Matt Miazga more. That like he's all about the badge. He's all about getting on the field. Like he was so fired up about the fact that he was going to miss that next match at the Teak for fans of the FC. He was going to let them down, that he wanted to go in and demand an explanation from the referees, or I'm sorry, that he went in to casually discuss
yes, thank you.
how this went and, popped his head in the door, thereby breaking the plane of the end zone and thus, by technical definitions, committing a trespass violation.
Chin scored a touchdown, yes.
Right. And as he leaned in to ask the refs politely if they understood the love that he had for New York fans, and then how I'm just a simple, defender. I don't think deeply. I'm not a midfielder. I'm defensor.
It's the classic Latin version of the sport.
It's how Mr. Spock would pronounce it. But, I show love to the fans. I don't think deeply about things. I kick ball hard other direction.
I will say that this whole thing, like him feeling the need to even just converse with the refs after the game, does I think support my tweet that it was a genuine heart toward the fans, because he's not the type of person who acts like sarcastically. He's the kind of person who just kind of does things very directly. Like he thinks it's a funny own to just point out that somebody is shorter than he is. That's how he
there's no subtlety.
That's how he talks. He doesn't have subtlety.
Yeah.
His mind doesn't work that way.
And I guess people don't realize this about Miazga. He played for the New York Red Bulls since he was 14 years old. He was eventually sold to Chelsea at the age of 21, was it? 22, 20, somewhere in there. He is from Medford, New Jersey, which I believe is one town over from Harrison. He is very much a Red Bull player through and through. If you're wondering why he's so good at shithousing, clearly he came up through the Red Bull academy system there. I heard going into this one that Miazga was asking every player if they had any leftover friends and family tickets, because he had every single member of his family was interested in coming to see him play at New York Red Bull for this big match. So yeah, there's a very good chance he's throwing up those heart symbols to his own family members, folks, in that crowd. So yeah, ridiculous.
So before we go,
please,
off this topic.
No, I'm leaving.
We were talking about why now for this.
Yes.
On the heels of all this other stuff involving referees like Sartini and all that. We are here in November, year of our Lord 2023. My understanding is that the collective bargaining agreement covering PSRA expires in January 2024.
Uh-oh.
So they are probably negotiating the next contract as we speak
right now,
or gearing up to negotiate for it. So what do you do in negotiations? You do whatever you can to get public opinion on your side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do little stunts. You make a little bit of a scene.
Yep.
Remind people that
you exist.
Refs exist and refs have feelings.
Yeah. And I don't know what the main topic of their negotiations is. I assume pay is always front of mind, but there's usually a couple of extra tidbits there. Maybe they are wanting more security in stadiums. This would be a good opportunity to highlight that need, right? Or they want harsher punishments for players doing X, Y, and Z, whatever the case is. So yeah, this could absolutely be being used in that political sense there. I do find it interesting though that like the players union and the referees union don't have some sort of like collaborative punishment for when one of them wrongs the other one, right? Like you would think
that's handled out in the parking lot, I think.
Clearly.
Street justice.
That's what Miazga thought. But like, yeah, like there should be some sort of like, hey, if you do this, you get this ban, rather than like them both going to tell dad that the other one hit them, and then pro or MLS then needs to resolve the issue there. I don't know.
So my big takeaway from all this is that the one thing that I know to be true is that the union lied.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened. I don't know the degree to which it happened. I just know that all source reporting is that the initial tweet that set this off contained a lie. And that's very and profoundly strange to me, to lie about something that would be so easily and demonstrably proven otherwise, that would be so easy to prove as being false. My other big takeaway from this, and I think, Kevin, you've pointed this out already, and that's that the last time we had a run-in with officials was after Noonan called that one official unprofessional following the NYCFC match last year.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, we couldn't buy a call for the better part of 6 weeks until somebody finally told Pat to make a public apology in one of his press conferences about how hard officiating is. And then all of a sudden, the 50-50 calls started being actually 50-50 again. So
yeah,
I am not eager to run that back in a single elimination format like we have going forward in the MLS Cup playoffs presented by Audi as discussed by the postcast.
Yeah, I think it was late Tuesday. I got a text message. Well, I can bet you one thing. We are absolutely losing our next match. Like, yeah, it kind of feels like the inevitable end to this story here, that the VAR is going to see that handball that nobody else could see, or that flop that clearly had studs going through somebody's thighs. I can tell you with some pretty good certainty here, unless something is about to change, that next opponent is likely to be the Philadelphia Union, as they are up 1-0 on the New England Revolution with about 7-8 minutes left to play. At the time,
and New England down a man.
New England's down a man. New England attacking pretty good right now. It's the best look they've had in a while. So yeah, there you go.
Well, we'll just need to win it convincingly. We won't rely on trying to win a foul in the box.
Yeah, we're gonna have to win,
because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be like a 5-2 victory, I think, if anything's gonna happen here. Grayson, I don't know the timeline of when we will know the results of these investigations and appeals and whatnot. Do you have any sense for how long this might take to resolve?
No, didn't it take like
months for Bob Bradley?
10 days. It took like 10 days for the Kai Wagner racial slur investigation to end up in anything.
For the weeks for the arena decision to Sorry,
I think people have said that they expect the disciplinary committee to come out with like its decisions by the end of like later this week.
Okay.
But this seems like the type of thing that would be outside of the normal. Like the disciplinary committee is usually like going through games that happened and saying like, oh, that player dove, we're going to find them. That player did not leave the field in a timely manner, that we're going to find them.
Right.
Rescinding yellow cards, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it could happen like tomorrow. It could happen, the week of. By it, I mean like
the appeal.
Finding out any findings from MLS about the. It could happen, the week of. The week leading up to the game on the 25th.
Oof.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just sucks because it felt like they had, I don't want to say a great chance, but they had at least, I'd say, a puncher's chance of getting the yellow card suspension overturned, at least one of those cards overturned. I feel like it's probably an uphill battle to expect Miazga is going to be cleared of wrongdoing in this instance. And also, oh, by the way, the yellow card is also going to be tossed out. This feels like something intuitively where they're going to split the baby on this and say, we are choosing not to discipline, or we found that there's not enough evidence to discipline him for his conduct towards the officials after the match, but we're not going to overturn that yellow. And if that was in fact the genesis for releasing this statement by the referees union, then congratulations, mission accomplished.
They did it.
There is one thing that came out in the reporting that we didn't mention that I do think was probably really dumb.
Oh, please.
There was I think it was a WCPO reporter said he saw like Miazga come from some direction he didn't see from where, talking to a comms person and saying like, something about like, find me then, or something like that, or find me.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, man.
Like, you're telling them you don't care about being fined.
Yeah.
This reminds me of like in The Untouchables when Frank Nitti is like, all right, arrest me. And he starts talking trash to Elliot Ness, and he's like, arrest me. And Elliot Ness decides he's had enough of it, and he throws him off the roof of the building.
Right.
So he's like, fine, you don't mind being arrested. See how you like this.
Yeah. So the most likely outcome then is, Chief, I think you laid it out. I do think that is the most likely outcome. Grayson, if you disagree, where the yellow card is upheld, but nothing comes of the locker room incident.
I feel like unless they really think that they can get away with saying it was absolutely nothing,
right,
there'll be some monetary sanction.
Oh,
to show that they did they investigated and while they don't believe like he actually was posing a danger or confronting referees, players need to be more respectful about their private space.
Well, you add
which is what the interesting part about that though is that part of what does lean towards the Matt Miazga has been fined an undisclosed amount as a result of this is that if Bogert is right and this happens all the time, that players go back and converse with the officials or pop their head into the officials' dressing room to ask a question or do that, any discipline that Miazga is subject to, has to comport with the CBA. And if there is evidence that there is similar conduct that goes unpunished because it's just part of some unwritten rule that, hey, we know you're not supposed to do this, but it is tolerated all the time, that might be something MLS is eager not to have out publicly how often players converse with refs outside of the official 90-minute time that they're on the field together. Because the minute that you start diving deeply into that as part of a union grievance that Miazga or the players union could file about this, it starts to get a little match fixy and a little, you just don't want to hear about that. And I don't think the league would be eager for that to become part of the public discourse as to how often players are going back and lobbying their case to match officials after games.
Yeah.
But it is match fixing to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The referees are intentionally lying, or maybe not intentionally, but they are absolutely lying to impact the odds of another team's, ability to progress.
Your ability, like as a referee, you affect the game from 0 to 90. It is not your place to try to influence, affect the outcome of games when the games are not actually going on.
Right. If Miazga was truly barging in and making violent threats or whatnot, go to the police.
Report it to the league. Report it to the league.
Yeah.
There are processes for this. The process is not go to Twitter.
Yeah, file a complaint with the league. This is clearly conduct that would be covered under your CBA with the league. File a grievance with pro. File a grievance. Take it up with the league. Don't go to the court.
The league is not their
opinion.
employer, as far as I know.
It's U.S. soccer. Everybody works for everybody. I'm sure some Soccer United marketing is involved in this somehow.
Actually, somehow the referees all report up to the players' union. It doesn't make any sense, but it was the structure they could figure out. Yeah, no, we'll see what happens. I am curious, does MLS pick pro referees to run their games, or does MLS go to pro and say, hey, we need a center referee, 2 assistants, and a 4th official, and some VARs. Who do you got available for us?
I think I could answer this if you guys filibuster for a little bit.
I can filibuster. Chief, if I did like the idea, though, of the undisclosed fine. How much money would Miazga pay to get the yellow card rescinded? Because that feels like the actual compromise here. It's $100,000 worth getting the yellow card.
It's not how much does Miazga feel comfortable paying. It's how much does Carl feel comfortable paying to Miazga to pay his fine. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Mr. Linder and say money is no object. We can all come. We are gentlemen.
Yep.
We are businessmen. We can come to some accord here and get this sorted out. I do want to circle back to the idea that I am now. It was a joke yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm.
A little less of a joke right now. I want there to be a special counsel or an expose into what is being said on these back channel text message threads by officials. I want to see the emails. I want to see the emails on the private server that these officials are talking on, because that does have a actual impact on these games. I want to know if they're out there and they're saying, you can never believe anything Lucho says. You just ignore him anytime he talks to you.
Right.
That impacts the game if they all talk about that.
Yeah.
That is match fixing. If they are having conversations outside of business hours about the players that they are held to be fair and open for. Or
I actually don't think I agree with that.
Well, don't say that. I'm covering for you while you research.
I think that
they should come into this with a blank. They should come in with a blank slate on all this. They should.
I think it's fair to be like, okay, Red Bulls, but the problem is they don't seem to do a very good job,
right,
of like knowing how teams play or what players' tendencies are, because teams like Red Bulls get away with doing what they do time and time again. By the way, I think Pro makes the assignments because.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to say why I think that. because I don't want to get us in trouble.
Ooh, okay. I like that answer.
It's in the, I think under the ref CBA, I think it talks about pro assigning the matches.
Okay.
Now, does pro have a contract with MLS that gives MLS some input on which of their officials?
Well, this is even worse.
Referee matches. I don't know.
Well, this is even worse
because
now if MLS doesn't comply with what the officials union wants, then what would be to stop pro from assigning a ridiculously does pro have a hit squad?
This is what I was going for.
Does pro have a squad where it's sort of like the goon line in hockey, where it's like, hey, they were messing with Ovi, get out there and remind them that they're not supposed to do that? Like, does pro have a crew of 4 people where it's like, these guys, they know the drill, they know what they're there to do?
How many?
It's like, hey, we need you to go make sure Cincinnati learns a lesson about how to deal with us.
How many pro referees are in that group chat saying, please let me have the opportunity to ref their next game? I'll teach them a lesson. Oh.
But no, the group chat's fine. That's fine. We don't care about that.
I just
release the text messages.
Yeah. Now, it does bother me that, like, for example, I forget who it was, said that like Kubo had a reputation as a dirty player.
Oh yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, it bothers me when they get stuff wrong like that, but
and yeah. And like, I don't know, just maybe don't put up with New York Red Bulls bullshit if you guys are all chit-chatting, which I assume they are. Like, you have
and
to.
Throwing a bunch of yellow cards after 90 minutes is not how you rein in a game that's going to get out of control.
Like,
but whatever. That's a different thing.
We saw studs up tackles, and Arias literally flipped into the air. Were both punished the exact same as Matt Miazga holding up heart hands just a little too much to fans that he played in front of since he was a small child. Cool.
What a Tuesday. And everyone thought that the real drama was issue 1 and issue 2. No, sir.
No drama there.
Real tough day for Miazga personally.
Oh, no. He really didn't want that railroad sold. He just loves trains.
He probably does.
He's a simple fellow like that, trains.
I will say to the 8 of you still listening, I absolutely shot a text message to FCC comms and said, "Any chance we can get Miazga?" So we tried for you, just so you know.
Left on.
Did you
red.
did you get a response to that?
Did not get a response. Now, I assumed it was known that was a joke, and now the longer there is no response, the more I think they think it was not a joke. So
then you have to do the awkward follow-up. By the way, I was kidding.
Yeah.
In case, not because I was, worried that you were going to say anything, just that now I need to establish firmly that that I really wasn't serious about this request.
But if you wait too long, it was clearly serious at first, and now with no response, I'm going to take it back and treat it as a joke.
It's like, I forget who the comedian was, where it was like, talking about proposing a threesome with your wife. You say it jokingly at first, just to see what the reaction is.
Unless,
well,
we managed to talk long enough to get the result of that New England-Philadelphia Union match. And folks, guess who we're playing? It's the Philadelphia Union.
Yeah. Yay.
Awesome.
Cool. So we get them, not a sadly wildly dysfunctional New England Revolution team, and we are just setting ourselves up very nicely for the rivalry run. Although sadly St. Louis is gone, man, we were really set up.
Sadly,
I'm just saying, if you wanted the worst possible outcome, it would have been New York Red Bull, Philadelphia Union, Columbus Crew, St. Louis. Like, that'd have been pretty rough to run through. So there we go. Gentlemen, I think that's a postcast, unless somebody...
I think it's got to be.
Unless somebody is desperate to talk about something else.
Do you know what's awesome about this? Is that people say we talk too much, which is accurate. People say I talk too much, which is also accurate. We just did an entire episode about 3 tweets and an athletic article. And nothing more.
I challenge us to do more with less next time because we might have to.
MLS needs more days like that. I said that yesterday.
Yes.
MLS needs more days like yesterday where it's hashtag this league. Like, that was fun. I wish it wasn't happening to our player. I wish it wasn't happening to Miazga. I wish this whole story was about someone from Nashville that stormed a locker room or something like that. Like, this was Hani Mukhtar or something.
Yeah.
Or Dax McCarty. That would be fun. But, like, the league needs more of this, where there is an emergency story written by The Athletic with unnamed sources from multiple teams being quoted. Cryptic tweets, follow-ups by Pat Brennan 11 minutes later. This is good shit. This is how every other sports league in the world operates. This is a grow-up moment for MLS. And to everyone out there that was being all, holier than thou and pearl clutching, you're welcome.
Yeah.
This is entertaining.
Yeah. Every other fan base knocked out of the playoffs, you're welcome. Like, you finally had something to root for. And I think, officially, we're the villains. Like, this really changes the dynamic of the playoffs. We were the plucky underdog with the exciting story. Now we're assholes. And I think that's a good place to be. We finally, I think this week we have rightfully taken our spot on the throne of Asshole Mountain in MLS. And
yeah, I do think we're the baddies now.
Yeah.
This is good.
I think what really needs to happen is the next TIFO that the supporters group does needs to be a giant Miazga going up on the rigging with the quote underneath it, "I am the one who knocks." And then, like, the door from the officials right behind it.
Oh, that's so good. Miazga as Heisenberg. I love it.
Bunch of scared officials in the background.
It's not even about the other team. It's a threat to the officials.
It's the one true rival of FC Cincinnati, and that is the officiating core of MLS.
That is true. Grayson has me there. This whole time I was thinking it was the New York Red Bulls, but my God, this week showed me I had it all wrong. Can you imagine playing them a third time? What if we had lost that penalty shootout? Oh my God. I wouldn't be able to live.
Yeah, like if this week was all like, we're worried about, is Miazga going to be suspended?
Oh, man. And I don't know, do they keep the same officiating crew? My God, it'd be incredible. Oh, well.
Oh, well. Fuck Columbus.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us. And thank you so much again.